Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby and today we're going to be doing a book unhaul because as you can see I am surrounded by stacks of books that I am planning to unhaul for various reasons. I haven't filmed a book unhaul in quite some time, so I've just been setting books aside for months probably for books that I'm planning to unhaul. I really do like to do book unhauls at least twice a year, but if not probably more often, because there's always some reasons why I just don't want to hang on to books, whether I read them and I didn't enjoy them or they've been sitting on my bookshelves for literally forever and I just know in my gut that my reading taste has changed over time. I'm never gonna get around to reading these and I'm not even that excited about some of these books anymore. But also there is a decent amount in here of books that I did enjoy, but I just don't see any reason to hang on to them. And if you're wondering where I typically unhaul my books, it really depends. I do have some friends that are readers in real life, so a lot of times some of my books will go to them. I also will regularly take some of my books to like Value Village or Goodwill. I also donate to like little free libraries in the area. That's where a lot of my ARCs go because you're not supposed to sell the ARCs. But then I also do take some of these down to the half price books and you can resell them there, which is actually really cool. There are so many places that you can take books that you're unhauling. I know a lot of used bookstores that'll take them, libraries will probably take them, and please feel free to comment down below with where you typically take your books that you're unhauling if we need some more ideas out there. But anyways, before we do jump into the video, I wanted to take a minute to thank today's video sponsor, which is a new sponsor on this channel, and it's Aura. I don't know if you've ever tried to Google search your own name, but I have, and let me tell you, it definitely makes me a little bit uncomfortable knowing all of the information that is exposed out there on the internet, and data brokers can sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else out there who might try to target you. Things like your full name, your email address, your home address, your health records, your relatives, it's all out there. And that's where Aura comes in because Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and they automatically submit opt-out requests for me. So cleaning up my information not only helps me reduce the amount of spam that I get, but it also protects me from hackers who could use that information to try and access my bank records or my social media accounts or other sensitive information. And Aura also does so much more than protect me and my family from online threats that we cannot see. I do get other features like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more without having to download several different apps. It's really easy to set up, and the best of all is that I get everything at one affordable price. You might already have one or two of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and then leaving the back door wide open. Aura is always on doing the hard work of keeping me safe so that I can focus on other tasks and not have to worry about it. I value my privacy and I value yours. So you can go to aura.com/gabbyreads to start your 2-week free trial, or you can click the link down in the description. Thank you so much to Aura for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get to the book unhaul. Alright, so as I mentioned, for this book unhaul, I kind of like divided things into different stacks for like reasons for why I'm unhauling them. So this first stack of books right in front of me, I figured I would just start with the front because these are going to be books that I have read, but I've decided to unhaul for whatever reason. So the first two books on this list are going to be Expiration Dates and The Band. These were two 2024 ARCs that I actually read for the first reading vlog that I worked on in the month of January. This one ended up being a 2-star, this one ended up being a 1-star. Like, this is definitely one of my least favorite books that I've ever read in my life, so I can guarantee that neither of these need to take up any space on my shelf. I'll be getting rid of those. I also recently read The New Couple in 5B. This is a thriller that I recently just read for a reading vlog, and this one was fine. I think I ended up giving this one 3 stars, but I really don't see any reason to hang on to this because since it was only a 3-star, like, I don't see myself recommending this one very much. I'm also going to be unhauling The Venue by TJ Payne. This one is like a horror thriller novel that I read at the end of last year. I actually took this book to Japan with me, and I'm not gonna lie, like, that is the only reason why I considered keeping this book on my bookshelf, because like I have an attachment to this in a way because I read this book while I was in Japan. But I was like, Gabby, no, that's ridiculous. I was like, I didn't even enjoy this one that much. It was fine. It was like a 3-star. It was very average, very forgettable for me. I'm also going to be unhauling One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is shocking probably. I think it's only shocking because I used to consider this book to be one of my all-time favorites. However, I reread it again last August and I realized that I really didn't like this. Like, I did not like the writing style. I did not like the characters. I did not connect with it the same way the second time. And like, how unfortunate for that to happen to me. It's really rare that I reread a book and I have like a complete change of heart when reading it, but that was the case with this one. Like, unfortunately, I really didn't like this one. Hello Beautiful is a book that I'm gonna be unhauling because this is a book that I tried to read. I got like maybe 60 pages in before I decided to DNF. I just really wasn't connecting with this writing style. I thought it was so freaking boring and so slow, and I just was not in the mood. I don't think I'll ever be in the mood to read this one. I'll also be unhauling No One Can Know, even though this pains me because looking at this cover, I still get excited about it. It's like, have you ever been excited about a book for so long that it's still like in your brain? Every time you see the cover, you get excited even though you already read it and you didn't even like it that much? Because that's how I feel when I look at this book. Like, I still feel like I'm excited about this, but I know that I'm not because I read it and I gave it 3 stars and it was very mediocre. Unfortunately, this one will be getting passed on. Ugh, I feel very similar about this one, Vampires of El Norte. Every time I see this cover, I'm still like, oh my god, like she is the moment. But then, you know, I read this book and it was just fine. It was a 3-star, like it was okay. I just don't have any strong feelings towards this, and even though this cover is beautiful and like maybe that's reason enough to keep the book on my bookshelves, I just don't have the space for it. I just don't have the space on my bookshelves to keep books that are only 3 stars. Sadly, that is also true for My Darling Girl by Jennifer McMahon. This is another horror book that I read at the end of last year. I expected to really love this because I do typically love Jennifer McMahon, but this one especially did not work for me, so I really have no issue unhauling this one. 2 romance books that I'm gonna unhaul that just weren't really for me are Hello Stranger and You Again. These are 2 books that I DNF'd around 100 pages in. This one I DNF'd it because there was like some weird medical emergency, like life-threatening things going on in this book that just really like triggered me. Her life is on the line and like she has like a brain thing going on. Like, I don't want to read about that. And then You Again, this one just really wasn't for me. I really personally just did not connect with these characters, and I didn't like the way that this one was written very much. I only got like 100 pages in, but I know that these are not my thing. I'm also gonna be unhauling both of my copies of Business or Pleasure. I don't know, somehow I ended up with 2 copies of this, and this is a romance that I actually did enjoy. I think I gave this book around 4 stars, but I just don't see the reason to hang on to either of these copies because this is not gonna go down as like an all-time favorite romance for me. I actually have another book, The X Talk, from this author that I enjoyed even more, so I still have that one on my shelves, but these ones, I don't need these. And then Blacktop Wasteland is a thriller that I read last year, and this was another one where like it was fine. It was perfectly good. It was like 3 stars. The Leftover Woman is another book that unfortunately I DNF'd this one about like 50 or 60 pages in. I think I went into this book with the wrong expectation. Like, I didn't really realize what it was gonna be about when I picked it up and started reading it, and I just realized at the time like I'm really just not in the mood to read books that are kind of about this subject matter anymore. I also have a cute little stack here of books that were some of my BookTube book club picks from last year. I really like to hang on to all of my book club picks throughout the year. Even if I didn't like them, I like to hang on to a lot of my book club books, and just in case I end up doing any like end of the year live shows talking about my own book club. And it's kind of a running joke at this point that a lot of the books that I read from my own book club I end up not enjoying very much, but this year I feel like I'm really starting to turn things around this year, okay? Because January was a 5-star read, and then February I had a 4.5-star read, so like things are looking up, you know? But some of the books that I had last year that weren't as successful that I don't think I'm gonna hang on to include A Twisted Love Story by Samantha Downing. This book, I can't remember if I gave it 1 star or 2 stars, but I really didn't like this, and I don't see any reason to hang on to this. Same with Good Bad Girl by Alice Feeney. I usually love Alice Feeney, and I was so shocked by how much I didn't like this one. And then The Stranger Upstairs, this one has a really cool cover, really cool premise, but it did not live up to any of that for me. Like, it was fine. I think I gave this one 3 stars. Like, I didn't really dislike it, but it was just so mediocre. And then we had Wonderland by Jennifer Hillier. This is another thing that Jennifer Hillier, I do tend to enjoy a lot of her books, but apparently whenever I make one of her books my book club pick, that's when I don't like it. Like, why is the universe like this? This one just had the coolest premise ever with like the idea of this like Wonderland theme park, and it just did not deliver on the fun. And then, oh my gosh, Midnight is the Darkest Hour. It's unfortunate that I have to unhaul this just because of this cover is so stunning, and I had such high hopes for this one, but I did not have a fun time reading this book, like absolutely not. And then I think I'm also gonna be unhauling Nana by Brandon Massey, because even though this one was around, I want to say like a 3.5 or even up to a 4-star, it still wasn't a favorite. It wasn't enough for me to want to keep this book around on my bookshelves. All right, so this next little stack of books that I'm gonna be unhauling are all books that fall under the romance genre that I have read that I'm gonna be unhauling, including The Partner Plot by Christina Forrest. This is one that I just recently read for a reading vlog, and this one was just fine. It was 3 stars. And then I have Fly With Me by Andy Burke. This is another one that I was really excited about this because I love this cover, and this one's a sapphic romance that involves a pilot. Like, I was really excited for this, but this one also ended up being just fine, 3 stars. I have The Royals Next Door, which this one is one that I enjoyed quite a bit. I think I gave this one 4 stars, but again, it's not an all-time favorite. I just don't see any reason to hang on to this. Same goes for Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail. I actually liked this one. This is the sequel to Delilah Green Doesn't Care, and I actually liked this one quite a bit more than Delilah Green Doesn't Care because this one was also 4 stars for me. But again, I just don't see any reason to hang on to 4 stars that aren't like new all-time favorites. Like, I'm never gonna want to reread this. And then I have Love in the Time of Serial Killers. This was a book that really took me on a journey when I read it, because there were times at this book that I was like living living, laughing, loving, I thought it was gonna be 5 stars, and then other times that I thought I was gonna give this like 1 or 2 stars, and I settled somewhere around like 3 stars, but even still, like, it's not a new favorite. I'm not gonna keep this. And then we have The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. I don't even know if I can call this romance, actually. This one reads a little bit more like fantasy, like coming of age, found family. It's just not really my vibe. I DNF'd this one during Winterween. We have The Breakup Tour. This was definitely not what I was hoping for. This one is a book that compares itself to Taylor Swift, but honestly, like, this bitch wishes that she was Taylor Swift, and I found this book to be very obnoxious. And then we have Cleat Cute. This is another female romance that I had high hopes for that I did not end up loving this one. We also have Love Light Farms, which I think I've started to realize that Christmas romance books are just not for me. I mean, Christmas books kind of in general are just not really my thing anymore. I really thought this one could be the exception because everybody seems to be obsessed with this, but apparently it's not. I did not care for this. I actually DNF'd this one after like 100 pages in. And then we have My Roommate is a Vampire, which I am sad about this one because I really thought that this one could be my thing, but unfortunately I did not end up being a huge fan of this one. And I feel like I really should unhaul this so that somebody else who could potentially love this book could find it and get their hands on it, you know? And for those very same reasons, I'm gonna be unhauling Butcher and Blackbird. This was a 1 star for me. Like, I'm so sorry. It was a 1 star. I did not like this. This was definitely not my kind of romance. So hopefully somebody else will find it and absolutely love it. And then I'm also gonna be getting rid of Heartbones by Colleen Hoover because even though I read this one a few years ago, it was about a 4 star for me. Like, I enjoyed it fine, but I'm not really a fan of this cover in particular, and I just don't ever see myself rereading this or like coming back to this at any point. And then I'm also gonna be getting rid of Junkie, which this one does kind of make me sad because I used to consider this like one of my favorite male romances ever. Then I actually tried rereading this one. It was back in like December, and I was just like, I don't know about this. Like, I was not connecting with the first couple chapters at all. And because I don't ever see myself rereading it at this point, I'm just like, okay, well, I just need to get rid of it. And then I'm also gonna be getting rid of these 2 romances by Lana Ferguson. This one is The Nanny and this one is The Fake Mate. I did enjoy these both fine. I think The Fake Mate I gave like 3 stars, and then The Nanny I think I gave 3 to 4 stars. I enjoyed these fine, but they weren't exactly like my taste in romance. Like, they're very steamy. Oh yeah, another romance that I'm gonna be unhauling is Egomaniac by Vi Keeland. This is another one that I used to consider this like one of my all-time favorite romance books, and now I just don't know, dude. Like, my taste in romance has changed so much over time that I really don't think this would be my thing anymore. Okay, and then I have a whole bunch of different young adult books that I'm gonna be getting rid of, starting with Fourth Wing. You know, like, I don't even really know why I tried with this one, to be honest. I mean, I enjoyed this one a little bit more than I was expecting to because, you know, I'm not a big fantasy person, but I did end up giving this one around 3 stars. Like, I thought it was fine. There were some parts that I thought were really cringy and really bad, and then there were some parts that I actually enjoyed. But at the end of the day, you know, I just don't think that Fourth Wing is like my kind of book. And because this book is so insanely popular, like, I really just feel like I need to get it into the hands of somebody who's gonna absolutely love it, right? And then I'll also be unhauling Spells for Forgetting. Is this one young adult? Dude, I don't even know. Maybe it is adult. But this is a book that I've been hanging on to for such a long time because I keep trying to convince myself that this is gonna be a new favorite and that I'm gonna love it just because of this edition that I have is absolutely stunning. Like, so beautiful. It's got the sprayed edges and shit, but like, I've tried to read this 2 separate times now and I DNF'd it both times, and I'm like, okay, it's time to be real. It's time to be real. Like, I'm never gonna read this. It's never gonna happen for me. And then I have The Ones We're Meant to Find, which, like, devastation, because this cover is so beautiful, but I read this book and I didn't care for it too much. It was either 2 or 3 stars, not enough of a reason to keep it. I'm also gonna be getting rid of Thunderhead because even though I do still have the book Scythe, and I loved Scythe, like, Scythe was a 5-star book for me, I barely even remember if I enjoyed this sequel or not, and like, I don't see any reason to hang on to this sequel. I don't even have the 3rd book. Like, I don't have the full series. I'm fine with just keeping Scythe and like calling it that. And then I have the Falling in Love montage. This one was a female romance that I thought was cute. I think I gave this between 3 and 4 stars. Like, it was fine. I think I kept this for so long because I'm obsessed with the cover. Like, this cover is giving me such summer vibes. And then same with Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. Even though I thought this book was cute, I read it at the end of last year. This one was a book of the month selection that I had from last year, and I don't know, it was fine. I think this one was also like 3 to 4 stars, but I just don't see any reason to hold on to this. And then I have You've Reached Sam, which I wasn't even the biggest fan of this book. I think I gave this around 3 stars, but I've been hanging on to it for such a long time because of how much I'm obsessed with this cover, but like, it's time. It's time to let it go. I also have Soulmates, which this one is a really cute young adult romance book that I read last year at this time, actually. I remember reading this for Screaming Color last year when we did the round with green on the cover. It was a good time. I think this book was around 3 to 4 stars for me. And then I also have Tell Me How You Really Feel, which this was a young adult romance that I actually really loved when I read it. I think I even might have given this 5 stars. But at this moment in time, I just don't see any reason to hang on to this, especially with like young adult books because unless there's something very specific about the young adult book that I want to revisit and keep coming back to with like some of my all-time favorites, I just don't see any reason to hang on to them because young adult books aren't books that I go around like recommending super often and feeling the urge to like want to reread. And then same with Skyscraping by Cordelia Jensen. This book has been sitting on my shelves since probably 2015 when I read it. This one actually came with me from California when I moved, but I just don't really see any reason to hang on to this one anymore. Even though I did at one time consider this one to be an all-time favorite, I don't know if I would feel the same about it now. And because I just don't read that much young adult now, I don't feel as strong of an urge to hang on to these anymore. I'm also going to be unhauling The Picture of Dorian Gray, which this one definitely hurts me because this edition in particular is one that I looked really hard for. I actually got this off Book Depository a few years ago when Book Depository was still a thing. But this is one that I really, like, I looked everywhere for this edition because this is the one that I wanted, but then I read it and I didn't really like it. And so unfortunately, I don't want to hang on to this because I already read it. I know that I don't really care for it, and even though I went out of my way to try and find this edition of the book, I just don't see a reason to hang on to it for those reasons. But I'm like, damn it, because I really do love the aesthetic of this cover. I think it's so beautiful, but because I didn't enjoy the book, like, why would I keep this? I'm also going to be getting rid of both Greek Lessons and Black Girls Must Die Exhausted. These are two books that I also really enjoyed. I feel like they were both around 4 stars for me. They're more like kind of contemporary or even like literary fiction type of stories, but they're just the kind of stories that I don't see myself rereading these in the future, and I just don't see any reason to hang on to these copies. And then same goes for Beasts of Extraordinary Circumstance. This is a book that I read last year that I also liked. I think I gave this one around 4 stars, but again, this is like a literary fiction. Like, I don't see myself ever returning to this. I don't see any reason to hold on to it. And then I also have The Whispers by Ashley Audrain. I don't know if this one's considered more like mystery thriller or if this one's more just like contemporary fiction, but this is from the same author as The Push. I really thought I would love this one, but this one ended up being okay for me. It was around a 2 or 3 star, I can't remember. Okay, sorry, had to change the angle slightly because the lighting is getting weird in this room. Another book that I'll be unhauling is Starling House by Alex E. Harrow, because this one was one that I read in October last year. It was a little bit outside of my comfort zone because it has like that touch of fantasy to this, and I just thought it was fine. It was around a 3 star. Even though I do love this cover, I don't see myself hanging on to this. And I do have a pretty big stack of books that fall into like the thriller horror genre that I'm gonna get rid of, including The Chestnut Man. This is a book that I've actually tried to read multiple times, and every time I've tried to read this, I can't get past page 200. Like, look at that. Oh my god, I still have a bookmark at page 198. This is a book I've tried to read several times. I just find it so boring and so not for me. I'm also going to be unhauling The Lies We Told because even though this one was a thriller back in the day that I read, and I think I gave this 4 or 5 stars, but this is one that I just don't see myself recommending super widely, like all the time. I barely even remember a lot of things about this book, and it's not a favorite of mine. I'll also be unhauling The Hacienda for very similar reasons actually to Vampires of El Norte, where like I love the concept in these books. I love the writing style in general, but the books just in general, like I just don't connect with them. I find them to be so slow and kind of boring. I think it's mostly like the historical kind of writing in these books that I don't connect with. But because it wasn't like a favorite, I think I gave this one 3, maybe 4 stars. Because it's not a favorite, I'm not going to hang on to this. Same goes for You're Invited. This one is a thriller that I read that I was surprised by. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought that I would, at least in the first like 100 pages, but it's still not a favorite of mine. And then same with Mexican Gothic, which I'm honestly surprised. I've hung on to this since 2020. I actually read this when it came out in 2020, and I thought Mexican Gothic was good. I think I gave this 3 to 4 stars, but again, because it's not a favorite, I'm no longer going to be hanging on to these books. We have The Burning Girls by CJ Tudor, which this one was actually a booktube pick from, I want to say 2021. And this is another one that, again, I enjoyed it. It was 4 stars. It was fine. I'm just not going to keep it. We have The Fiction Writer, which this was an arc that I read at the end of last year. And this one was okay. It was kind of like, I described it as like the vanilla version of Verity. I also have Leech, which unfortunately I ended up DNFing this one during Winterween. Dude, I just could not get on board with this writing style. It was so hard to get into this for some reason, and I just don't see myself vibing with this one. I also have The Night House by Joe Nesbo. I have the final copy of this one, and this was a 1 star. It was a 1 star book for me. I really didn't enjoy this. Like, I don't even have to explain why I'm getting rid of this. I'm also going to be unhauling No One Needs to Know. This one's a thriller that I've tried to get into. I want to say I got about like 50 to 60 pages into this before I just realized I'm not really vibing with this. I don't really care about the writing. I don't care about the characters. I was just very uninvested. I'm also going going to be unhauling The Devil of Nanking, which this is one that's unfortunate because this is another one that I DNF'd probably a little bit more than 100 pages into. I actually looked up spoilers for this one, and I'm actually really glad that I decided to DNF when I did, because I don't know if I would have been able to handle some of the things that happened a little bit later on in this one. And then I'm also going to be unhauling Rouge by Mona Awad. This is another book that I ended up DNFing after about like, I don't know, 100 pages. This writing style was just so weird. It was really hard to get into. And then I just heard that the rest of this book is just like weird fever dream, like nothing makes sense, and I'm just not really in the mood for that right now. I'm also going to be unhauling False Witness by Karen Slaughter. This was actually another BookTube pick from back in 2021, and even though I enjoyed this one, I think this one was around a 4-star for me. I do have a few others from Karen Slaughter that I prefer over this one, and so I just don't see any reason to hang on to this one. I'll also be unhauling The Night of the Storm. This is a thriller that I actually just recently tried to read, and I ended up DNFing this one about 50% of the way through it. This one feels less like a thriller to me and more of just like a slow burn family drama, which just wasn't really what I was wanting from this. And then I'll also be unhauling Out There Screaming, just edited by Jordan Peele, because even though I did like a few of the short stories in this collection, I feel like overall it was pretty disappointing. I feel like a lot of the stories averaged out to be about 3 stars. Like out of the 20 short stories in this, I think I only had maybe 2 5 stars and only a few 4 stars. It was overall more disappointing than not disappointing. And then I'm also going to be unhauling Look Closer by David Ellis, because even though this one, again, it's a thriller that I enjoyed, I gave it 4 stars, it's not a new favorite. And then I'm also going to be unhauling Apples Never Fall and Sisters of the Lost Nation, which these are 2 books that I tried to get into and I've DNF'd both of them. I actually have tried to read Apples Never Fall, I think 2 different times now, and I've DNF'd it both times. But I recently heard that they announced an adaptation for this coming out very soon, so I am curious to see this story in like movie or TV show format or whatever it's going to be, because I do think it would work better on screen than it did in the book for me. And then this one, I just wasn't a fan of the way that the story was told, and the audiobook narrator also drove me nuts. I don't think I would have that better of an experience though if I tried to read this physically. I'm not that interested in this anymore. Oh, and there are 2 more BookTube picks, because I was like, was that all of them? No, we also have The Soulmate by Sally Hepworth. This was a BookTube pick from last year that I'm going to be unhauling. I just was not very interested in this one. Like, I thought this one was fine. It was your very standard domestic thriller. And then also How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. I thought this one was fine. It was like a 3-star. Some other books that I'll be getting rid of is You Can Make This Place Beautiful. This one's a nonfiction book that I was really excited about that I actually ended up DNFing this about 30% of the way into it. Dude, I could not get on board with this author's like writing style. I don't know. She was just driving me absolutely nuts. That might make me sound heartless when I say that, but she was just really driving me nuts. Like, I don't know what it was about this book, the writing, I couldn't connect. And then I'll also be unhauling Romantic Comedy. Even though this is one that I enjoyed, I feel like this book feels like 2 different books to me. The beginning of this book does feel like a romantic comedy, and then the second half of this book feels like very sad and depressing and talking about COVID and like what the heck is going on. This was about a 3-star for me. It was fine. And then I'll also be unhauling The Dating Plan, which this is a romance that I thought was cute. I read it a few years ago now, back in 2021. I gave it 4 stars. It was fine. And then Beach Read. I'm actually going to be unhauling Beach Read because out of all the Emily Henry books, this one has always been my least favorite, which I know is like maybe an unpopular opinion, but Beach Read was about a 3-star for me. I actually read this back in 2020 when it came out, and I've just been hanging on to it all this time, and I'm like, for what? And then I'll also be unhauling If Only I Could Tell You, which this one is more of a contemporary kind of like family drama story that follows these sisters. I actually read this back in 2019 and I did enjoy it. I gave this one 4 stars, but again, a book from 2019 that I gave 4 stars, like I just don't see myself ever returning to this. I don't need to keep this. I also do have 4 manga that I'm going to be unhauling. These were all books that I read during my manga video that I just recently did. For example, Death Note Volume 3. Oh my gosh, I ended up being so disappointed by Death Note. Like, I don't even know if I'm going to continue in the Death Note series now because of how much I didn't like this one. And then this one, New York, New York. This is the first manga I've ever given 1 star to. Like, I really did not like this. I did not connect with these characters at all. And then I also have this one, Hyperventilation. I was just really disappointed and underwhelmed with the story. And then also The Summer You Were There manga, because even though this one looked so cute and so promising, I just didn't really vibe with either of these characters, and I don't see myself continuing in this series. Okay, we have almost made it to the end of this unhaul. If you recall from my recent video that I just posted where I did the spin the wheel chooses which backlist books that I've read, which I had a really great time with, by the way, and if you haven't seen that video, I highly recommend watching it because it was so much fun. But during that video, I was kind of talking about how I was putting some books on that little spin the wheel, and then I was thinking to myself, like, oh my god, like, I don't really want to read that though, or like, oh, if that actually got picked on the spin the wheel, I would actually be like, damn it, like, I don't really want to read that right now. And I was like, okay, well, if I'm thinking that way about some of these books that are just sitting on my backlist shelf that like I haven't gotten around to in a long time anyways, then like clearly I just need to unhaul them, right? And so this whole stack of books in front of me right here, like these are the books that I was gonna put on that spin the wheel that I was like, no, I just don't want to read that. And speaking of books that I read for that video, I did read Strange Weather by Joe Hill, and I read You Will Know Me, and both of these books were DNFs for me, and both books that I've decided to unhaul since doing that video. So some of those books include Friends Like These by Kimberly McCreight. This is one that I had always convinced myself I'd eventually get around to reading this, but the more time that goes by, the more that I seem to lose interest in reading this, and the Goodreads ratings for this are very low, which does not help with me wanting to pick this up. I'm also going to be getting rid of On Rotation. This is actually one that I did try reading very recently. I got like 50 pages into this and I just did not vibe with this writing style at all. This author does this really weird thing where there's a lot of like footnotes at the bottom of the page that just feel so random. Also gonna be unhauling The No Show by Beth O'Leary because I don't really know what I was thinking buying this one, to be honest, because the only other book that I've read from Beth O'Leary was The Flat Share, and I absolutely hated The Flat Share, even though that one was so popular. And then this one is about a guy who's like dating 3 girls or something at the same time. I just really don't think this one would be my thing. I'm also going to be getting rid of Accidentally in Love and Fool Me Once by Ashley Winstead. These are 2 books that I have tried and I DNF'd both of them, but I always just assumed like, oh, well, one day I'll come back to this, especially Fool Me Once by Ashley Winstead, because I was such an Ashley Winstead fan after In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. I was like, maybe it's just me, I'll come back to this eventually. But no, Fool Me Once, I really don't think this would be my thing, especially since I've read other romance books by Ashley Winstead and I still didn't like those either. And then Accidentally in Love is a book that I DNF'd pretty early on, around like 30 to 50 pages in. Oh, look at that, still have the bookmark in. And this is just one that I really feel like I won't connect with. This one also has shockingly low ratings on Goodreads, which I'm like, holy crap. You know, it's one thing because like usually I don't care about Goodreads ratings very much, right? Like usually I don't care. When it comes to horror books, I feel like sometimes I end up loving books that are rated really low on Goodreads, but when it comes to romance books, I'm like, what is the reason why a romance book would be rated as low as it is? Usually, like, that's a huge red flag to me. If a romance book has a really low rating on Goodreads, then I'm like, yeah, there's probably a reason why, and I probably wouldn't like it. I'm also gonna be unhauling Tools of Engagement and You Deserve Each Other. I know that this book, You Deserve Each Other, has been recommended to me a lot over the years because of how much I tend to love, hate to love romances, but both of these books are me from a different period of my life. Like, I got these probably 5 years ago, back in 2019. I really don't think these kind of romances are my kind of thing anymore. Like maybe 2019 me would have really loved these, but I don't know if I would love these now, and I'm not willing to find out. Like I'm not excited about either of these anymore. Then I'll also be unhauling This Spells Disaster and With Love from Cold World. These are 2 books that I've tried the first few chapters of them on audio. I just couldn't get invested. Especially with this one, I feel like I'm just maybe not the audience to read like witchy romance books. I always want to give them a chance and then they never end up really being my thing. And then this one is one that I had hope for because I had enjoyed the book from this author previously, The Love in the Time of Serial Killers. I feel like with this one, I got like 50 pages in maybe, and I was like, yeah, I'm just not vibing with these characters much at all. Gosh, another one that I keep trying to read is Thank You for Listening by Julia Whelan. It seems like everybody freaking loves this book, and I've tried to read this book 2 different times and I DNF'd it both times. Like I can't get into this. I don't know what it is about the writing. I just cannot connect with this, and it makes me sad because I feel like everybody that I know just like raves about this book, like nonstop, being like, it's an all-time favorite romance, and I just can't get on board. I think it's mainly the love interest. I don't really like him. I don't know what it is about him. I just don't like the love interest in this book, and so every time I've tried to read it, it's like I just get bored and I want to DNF. And then I'm also going to be getting rid of both of these Sarah Adams romance books. Again, I haven't read these, so I can't know for sure, but I really don't think these 2 would be my thing anymore. I feel like my romance taste has changed a lot over the years, and just from what I've heard people talking about what these books are like, I really don't think Sarah Adams might be the author for me, and I'm not excited to read these books. Like the idea of putting either of these on my backlist, like spin the wheel thing, was making me like dread that feeling. Like I don't want to read either of these. And then same with The Intimacy Experiment, because even though at one time I was really excited for this book because I do love The Roommate by the same author, I just don't have any excitement for this one anymore. I also tried to read the first chapter of Winter's Orbit, and this one was a gay sci-fi book that I always thought I could be really into, but honestly this kind of feels like maybe a gay version of like Dune or like Star Wars, or like it's trying to be that, and I don't really like Dune or Star Wars, so I really don't think this would be my thing. After reading that first chapter, it was like my brain just like shut off. Like it felt like straight fantasy, and I was like, yeah, this is not for me. I'm also going to be unhauling Scenes of the Crime because even though this one's a thriller that I was interested in reading at one time, the Goodreads reviews on this one are shockingly low, and I was like, yeah, I really don't feel like I should waste my time reading this one. I'm also going to be unhauling Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte because Classics, I've come to discover, are just really not my thing. It's like I keep trying to tell myself that like maybe one day, like maybe sometime I'll try a classic and I'll love it, but that really hasn't been the case yet, and I really don't see myself picking this book up anytime soon. I am just not a classics girl, you know, I'm really not, and I have to accept that. All right, and then this last little stack of books are all books that I've just had these on my shelf for literally forever, and when I was gonna put these on my backlist little spin the wheel thing, I was like, I don't want to do it. And that was Infinite Country. This is one that I've just had sitting on my bookshelves since 2021, and even though it's short, I just don't really see myself wanting to read this. I don't get excited anymore when I think about this one. Like, it's just been sitting there for 3 years and I haven't read it. And then same with The Survivors by Jane Harper. I really don't know if Jane Harper is gonna be like the thriller author for me, and this one has never been talked about as like people's favorite. Oh, look at that, I have a freaking bookmark still in here for chapter 2. Like, I never got far in this. I feel like a lot of these books I have tried to read them at some point over the years, and then I just keep telling myself like, oh, one day I'll come back to it. No, it's not gonna happen. Same with This Time Next Year. I feel like this is another romance book where I've tried to read this one too, and I always think, oh, maybe like around New Year's Eve or around that time of year I'll get really motivated to read this, and then it's been 4 years. Like, I've had this on my shelf since 2020 and it just never happened, and I'm never in the mood for it, so I just need to get rid of it. And same with The Last Story of Mina Lee. This one's been sitting on my shelves since 2020, and I was excited to read this at one point, and now I'm just not. And also, this book has incredibly low ratings on Goodreads, and so it's not encouraging me to want to pick this book up. I also have I Did It For You. This is another thriller that I actually did try to read at the end of last year. It was another one that I DNF'd pretty early on. I just don't think I'm connecting with this writing style, and there were so many characters like introduced right in the beginning that I was like, yeah, I can't. I'm also going to be getting rid of A Little Hope because this one's also been sitting on my shelves since 2021, and I've just started to realize that I don't think this kind of book is exactly my reading taste anymore. I feel like back in 2020 and even 2021, this could have been something that I would have enjoyed if I read it back then, but I really feel like now I don't know if I'm really seeking out books like this anymore. And then lastly, the last book for this unhaul is gonna be Thicker Than Water, because this is a book that I was just talking about reading potentially as like a thriller pick for the Screaming Color Readathon because there's yellow on the cover, and I got a few comments on that video being like, yeah, that book sucks. And then like I was looking up the Goodreads ratings for this. The Goodreads ratings are not that high for this one. There's not a lot of people talking about this one. I just feel like those are all negative signs for me that I'm like, yeah, why would I waste my time? I feel like especially when it comes to thrillers that are like the typical kind of like domestic thrillers, there has to be something special about the book that would make me want to read it, and I just don't think that this one's calling my name. So instead of having this one sit on my shelf and collect dust for the next like 2 to 3 years, I'm just gonna go ahead and unhaul it now. Wow, look at that. There was so many books. Thank you so much for watching this book unhaul and hanging out with me. You'll have to let me know if book unhauls are something that you still enjoy seeing from me, and if these are videos that you would like for me to continue to film every time I unhaul books in the future, or if you're sick of them, if you're done with the book unhauls, then let me know. Because, you know, of course, I want to be making content that you guys want to watch. So if you want the book unhauls, I will deliver on that. But if you don't want them anymore, I would love to know that as well. If you are wondering, by the time that you're seeing this video, a lot of these books will already be gone and unhauled. But thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you very soon with another video. Bye!